Gerry Higgins, the Chief Exec at Community Enterprise in Scotland and the founder and director of Social Enterprise World Forum. And the focus of this unit is that social enterprise supply chain is not just about large corporates using their spend to benefit society. This is relevant to family businesses, SMEs, social enterprise, non-profits, third sector organisations. Any organisation that has an interest in their expenditure on everyday products or services having an impact on communities. So what I'm going to do is first of all explain the rationale and then I'll go on to why this is a good idea, and I'll go on to expenditure analysis. So looking at the method that we use in C.I.S. to track our spend. And then I'll look at stakeholder reporting and how we report the impact of our spending to our internal audience of staff and board. Then I'll look at external stakeholder reporting and how we get this message out as far and as wide as we can. And then at the end, I'll look at the potential of flagship events, whether they're one-off events or regular but large and significant events to a wide audience, because all of these can have a significant impact. So the rationale for social enterprises, non-profits and third sector organisations maximising their spend with others in their sector includes the fact that this is building capacity. If we all maximised the opportunity we have through our discretionary expenditure to spend from third sector and social enterprise suppliers, we can actually have cumulatively a significant impact in building the capacity of the social enterprise movement. For us in C.I.S., we're about making Scotland a better place to live and work and a more inclusive environment. And although our spend isn't huge, we're a company with 60 staff and a budget of about £4.3 million. When we apply that policy of maximising the spend we have with social enterprise organisations, actually we see that we have a significant impact, and we know that others can do as well. It also gives us an ability to provide feedback and to improve the service and the products that are produced and delivered to us by our suppliers. And because we're in the same sector, if we have a catering supplier and the meals provided aren't to the quality or the standard that we require, we're not going to dump that catering supplier, we're going to give them that feedback. If they're not listening, we might move on to a new catering supplier. But if they are listening, that can help them. It gives them a valuable opportunity to improve while working with a friendly organisation in the sector. We've also had situations where again in catering, where one of our suppliers produced us the most marvellous lunches, and when we looked at the price we were paying for it, we realised that actually this was hugely over-delivered. So they later sat one of our workshops on costing and pricing, so they actually could understand the true cost of the service that they were producing and make that more sustainable, because they were actually over-delivering significantly. I guess our issue is that if every third sector organisation did this, whatever country they're in, that our cumulative spend and the impact we can have on others in our social enterprise community is very, very considerable. So C.I.S. being a small organisation, we have a simple manual system that we use every quarter, where we look at our total expenditure. We then analyse our discretionary spend, so we remove wages. We remove a couple of items, not much more than 2 or 3 items, where we have no option of having a third sector provider. One of those is audit, where there aren't, to my knowledge, any third sector providers of audit services. This is in the preserve of the commercial sector, so we take that out. But broadly speaking, 99% of the suppliers or the goods and services we produce, we have an option, if we choose it, to having a third sector supplier. So we look at our total third sector spend, we look at our public sector spend, our commercial spend, and there might be a couple of other in that category as well. So we see at the end of every quarter our total spend with third sector organisations. We see the number of companies that we have dealt with, and we see that as a percentage of the total expenditure in the company. We bring that forward to our key performance indicators. Now, most businesses have key performance indicators so that they can understand the impact that they're having across their company, whether they're on target. In our KPIs, we have a few dozen KPIs because our business has 5 different services, each doing unique activities. So our KPIs are reasonably complex, but we bring this together onto one page, which we call our vital few. And typically there are 10 issues in our vital few, which are the key measures of how our business is performing on a quarterly basis. One of the measures of our vital few is our expenditure with third sector organisations. How are we doing in relation to target? And the way we measure that is by looking at outturn from previous year, looking at our target from this year, and our performance year to date against that target. So we see in the slide that our third-party expenditure outturn was 76%, that our target in the year is 75%, and our current performance is 79%, so we're ahead of target in the year. This is reported to staff and to board members on a quarterly basis, so that this is something that all our staff members and board members are interested in. They follow it, and I'm about to explain why it actually matters to staff, because it's another measure of the type of organisation we are demonstrating our values. We also produce a 9-box diagram for our website, and we also produce an A5 card which is targeted at external audience. So it's articulating our impact, telling folk outside our organisation how we're performing as an organisation. So staff get together, all 60 of us, and we look at our performance and we agree what it is that we should be reporting to the outside world. And one of the key elements that's been on this from the start is our expenditure with third sector suppliers, where the centre box shows our expenditure in the last financial year and the outturn from the previous financial year, which shows that we've improved our performance over the last year. This is something that generates quite a bit of interest. We do get inquiries from potential suppliers saying, I've seen this, I've never seen a figure that's as high. I'm really interested in potentially being a supplier to C.I.S. Here's the product or service that we provide. So it does generate inquiries from new suppliers. We also get inquiries from other third sector organisations asking us about the system. So how do we measure it, and what do we do to ensure that we maximise our third sector spend? So as you've seen from the diagram where we analyse our spend, it's not complicated. If you were a much larger company, you would have a system, potentially an SAP system, that gave every supplier a code, and you wouldn't need to sit down once a quarter like I do for 15 minutes to do a spreadsheet and to analyse that spend. One of the really important elements of our third sector spend is bringing the message and the impact home to key staff within the organisation. The most successful example we've had of this is our partnership with Wild Hearts, who began as our stationery supplier. We were perfectly happy with the cost and the service from our existing stationery supplier, but we knew that Wild Hearts were a social enterprise. When they were introduced to us, we decided to displace our current supplier and to give Wild Hearts a chance. They were completely price competitive and quality comparable with our supplier. But when we had our all-staff session 2 years ago, we asked Wild Hearts to bring a staff member along to tell us about what the impact our spend is having and how it assists them in their mission, accepting that we're only a small customer for Wild Hearts. They have very large corporates in their customer base, but if they were prepared to send somebody along to tell us about the work that they did and the impact they were having, it was the most powerful indication to staff that in living our values, in having a policy of having third sector spend, our expenditure on an everyday item like stationery was actually having an impact in Scotland, alleviating poverty, educating children, and in Africa, working in communities where there's significant poverty and disadvantage. Because in all of this, I guess myself and senior management colleagues and board set the policy, but for it to be effective, the power is not with us. The power is in the hands of the people who order the stationery, the catering, the utilities, and all of the services that we purchase. So they have to be informed, and the best way of doing this is to bring the mission and the impact closer to the people who are making the purchasing decisions. So by bringing Wild Hearts in, this got a lot of people on board, and when there's something to be ordered, the first question to staff across the organisation will be, is there a third sector option? And we have dialogue with colleagues about looking at the options and how we're going to go about it. So this is really embedded amongst all levels of the organisation. We have opportunities from flagship events, as we see here from the diagram about Social Enterprise World Forum. So this event has a budget of £765,000 sterling. And thankfully for us and our team, we don't run this every year. The forum happens every year in some part of the world, but in 2018, we're hosting it back in Scotland. So our budget, which I mentioned was group-wide, 4.3 million, is boosted this year with an exceptional item of over £750,000. And that's created an opportunity for us to really drive hard at establishing a third sector supply chain. So looking at all of the categories of expenditure for this event, what opportunities do we have to build capacity of social enterprises, to build portfolio, to bring social enterprises into this supply chain? So we set about from the very start, 2 years ago when we commenced our planning. We looked at our expenditure categories and we looked at where we might be able to identify third sector suppliers. We had tenders that were restricted initially to third sector suppliers to see what would result. And we've ended up with a very significant spend, currently sitting at 60% of expenditure, and likely to end up at somewhere in the region of £460,000 of that spend sitting with third sector suppliers. The majority are Scottish and local, but some aren't. Some are from other parts of the world, but they're third sector and social enterprise suppliers. So the impact that £460,000 worth of spend will have amongst our suppliers is considerable. Patience might well be required, however, because in our experience of event management, what we do get quite a lot from venues is that our catering or other services are tied to a particular provider, and there's simply no room for budging. That this is our provider, we have a contract with them, they have to provide 100% of the service. We found that that isn't actually always the case. There's usually room for a conversation with a venue on whether or not we can, because of the nature of this event, introduce the third sector or social enterprise supplier. And that was the case with Edinburgh International Convention Centre this year, where after 7 months of negotiation, we managed to get agreement and concession to have social enterprise suppliers providing the catering, which is a substantial expenditure item because there's 1,400 people to be fed each day for 2 days. We're delighted that the Social Enterprise World Forum, as our exceptional event, allowed us to have a supply chain of over 40 suppliers. These are in areas like catering, venue provision before and after the event, and study tour provision. And we know that our engagement with these suppliers has had a very significant impact for some. For some, they've told us that this is the first contract that they have delivered, and they're looking forward to this being on their portfolio as they build their business and go on to other opportunities. For others, it's helped them to understand that our positive policy of discriminating or selection of third sector suppliers is something that they should do similarly. This is a feature of our business and the way we like to operate. We think it's highly transferable, it's not complicated, it's something that produces a meaningful social impact, and we encourage you to do something similar in whatever part of the world you're in. Thank you for listening.